What our society labels as a normal, healthy person is in almost all instances a falsely empowered codependent. And that's what makes relationships so difficult, is the so-called normal person is severely dysfunctional, yet our society holds them up as a well-adjusted adult. Well, today I'm going to clear that confusion up for you by explaining how the falsely empowered codependent expresses the 5 core symptoms of codependence. And then I'm also going to share how both men and women, falsely empowered codependent men and women, express those symptoms differently so that you can identify them more easily. Now, you're going to really see in step 3, out of touch with reality, this is where you're going to see the modern, healthy version of an adult. You're going to go, oh my God, I had no idea, but you're right. They are in severe dysfunction and out of touch with reality. But the first 2 things we need to cover before that are lack of self-love and a lack of boundaries. So let's get to those first. A falsely empowered codependent minimizes and denies their own feelings. Think of a successful person. They'll usually say, oh, feelings don't matter. No, don't deal with feelings in the boardroom. They tend to see them as a weakness. You see this all over the so-called stoic male podcasts. You know, men, we deal with logic. Well, what's so sad about that position is every thought you ever have starts with an emotion. So the premise that men are more, are more intellectual and logical, it's just not true. All of us are emotional. We just express it in different ways. So because of this, they lack, the falsely empowered codependent, and women do this too, they lack empathy for others' emotions. Instead, they develop what's called other or outer esteem, and this is the success part. Their lack of self-care leaves them believing that their value comes from the admiration of others and the adulation that's derived from achievement. Achievement and the presentation of being confident is the smokescreen that they use to hide their deep, deep shame and inherent lack of self-love. But our society holds them up. What they don't realize is those people chasing all of that achievement, all of that success, it's all about outside. They hold that up. It's not about their inherent self-love and inherent worth, that regardless if they achieve this, they like themselves. They have no value unless they have the car, the corner office. Like, that's why their Instagram and everything is about this, because there's nothing here. It's covering over. This is a smokescreen so you don't see how filled with shame and low self-esteem they are. Okay? So because of that, the falsely empowered codependent sees themselves as better than others. Remember, they have all this outside esteem, and our society says, well, if you have those things, you're better. So it's a dual manipulation. We feed into this and promote it in them as well. We're partly responsible for their false empowerment. All right? Therefore, they can be arrogant and grandiose, or caught in the delusion of perfectionism. A perfectionist is, in most cases, they can be both disempowered and falsely empowered. But perfectionism is always about false empowerment. They need outside approval. That's why they're seeking perfectionism, because their childhood was so filled with severe shame and degradation for not being perfect. Or, on the converse side, they can present themselves as flawlessly good. These are the ultimate givers who do everything for everybody else, but that's all about power, because underneath that, they're looking for the adulation and admiration for how flawlessly good they are. Those are all manipulative, codependent, covert dynamics that the falsely empowered codependent uses, and that our society doesn't call out and say, oh, look how good they are. Oh, no. Oh, no. I mean, their goal is to get the adulation, and that's why they pursue the good. It's not from here. It's external. It's outside, other esteem. That's a lack of self-love. Self-love is the ability of, regardless of what I do or don't do, I always have value. I don't need perfectionism. I don't need to do good. I am good. I am always good. That is at the heart of self-love. You know you are out of self-love and self-worth the second you question it. You've just stepped out of it. At all times, no matter what you do, even in your worst moment, you are worthy. That is self-love, but not in these dynamics. It's all external. All right? A lack of boundaries. Number 2, the falsely empowered are anti-dependent and invulnerable. They rarely ask for help or admit to needing help. They say no as a power play. It's a power dynamic. See, this false empowerment position is all about power. The typical disempowered codependent that we think of how everyone identifies them as weak and no power. That might be true. I mean, I don't want to get, that's really a mixed up soup. There's more going on than that. But the falsely empowered is all about power. And so they can say no like that. And most of the time you can see a little twinkle in their eye. It's that they're getting power. They may have wanted to do it, but it's just about power. All right? That's a lack of boundaries. Their conscious and unconscious goal at all times is to gain power and control, to keep themselves safe. That's why there's a lack of boundaries. Boundaries is healthy boundaries is the ability to move in and out, sharing of intellectual, emotional, spiritual, and physical intimacy. There's not a wall, all right? Well, the falsely empowered uses walls, all right? Another way that they express their lack of boundaries is something is always more important than the relationship. Most often, it's their career, or it's some sort of outside hobby or pursuit. You're seeing a lot of it now with working out, animals. Those are the primary ways that people abandon other people and use their false empowerment to control. This, like I see it on women's dating profiles, right at the top. It's all about their dogs or whatever animal it is, or their kids. Everything is about this. So they're already in a relationship here. And that level of toxicity, to be that involved with your kids and love your kids that much, that's not love. That's what creates this falsely empowered codependent. A healthy parent isn't that obsessed with their kids that on a dating profile they demand, look, you're going to be a mistress because I'm already married to my kids, to my dog, to my whore, whatever it may be. But this is my life. So I'm not looking for a relationship. What I'm looking for is for somebody to pick up the scraps because this is where I'm avoiding intimacy and connection. I have no boundaries. And so I'm in a power dynamic over my animal who, think of it, every animal, the second you walk in the door, just showers you with attention. And you decide when and if you want to give it. Animals are all about power. People's passion for animals, it's the power they get from them. They're a light switch. When they want love and attention, that puppy, that cat, whatever, they just get it. When they don't, they walk away. The obsession with animals is about power. Same thing with kids. The obsession with children is about power. It's not about love because they lack the intimacy boundaries to connect with an adult. So if you see that, a man or woman on their profile, and they're going on and on, or right at the top, they're talking about animals and kids, run. You will not have intimacy. It's not possible with someone who is already that detached, as we'll get into, reality of the dysfunction that they're struggling with, because our society labels this as good parenting, as a good person. We're totally out of reality of the falsely empowered codependent, all right? So they also have to stay busy, nonstop, always be doing something. They can't be, because it's all external. Plus, the act of being, all of that shame, all of that low self-worth, all of that sadness would surface. And so that's why they're so successful in working 90 hours a week, or so obsessed with so many different things. They have to. It's sad. I'm not disparaging them. They're in so much pain. The most successful people are I don't know if they're the most hurt. They are very hurt people. And our society isn't. Think of what our society does. Those successful people, they can't be vulnerable. Because our society says you have it all. How could you be sad? How could you be depressed? You have money, you have the trophy husband or wife, you have all that adulation, admiration. God, I'd love to have your problems. No, you wouldn't. I'm telling you, no, you wouldn't. They're trapped. That's heartbreaking. And so their only recourse is to pursue outside admiration and attention and validation and keep themselves so busy so they don't have to get into truth and reality about the double bind they're in, that none of that will fix the shame and pain inside of them. And if they ever mentioned how hurt they were, the whole society would turn on them. They have nowhere to go. That's heartbreaking, to be living in that double bind. Now, most are unconscious of it, but that's the truth of what's going on inside of them. Therefore, they can be judgmental, critical, defensive, dismissive, indifferent, authoritative, enraged, and this is classic, they withhold information. They can be liars, but usually they say, oh, I don't lie. But they don't tell the whole story, and that's so they can keep, there's a lack of intimacy, there's no boundaries. They can maneuver what the excuse is or explanation is, so they never have to connect. These are all things they use to keep control over people. They are basically walled in and walled off. They avoid intimacy in all of these ways by not letting themselves be known. That's their lack of boundaries. Now, the most critical part is how out of touch with reality they are. The falsely empowered are completely unaware of their dysfunction. They are unconscious and deceiving themselves about the truth of who they are because they hold up the exterior, the outside and other esteem and pursuits and achievements. They don't know and they don't share their truth, but they believe they do. They will say and heartfully believe that they are very truthful and honest people when in fact they aren't at all, and they can't see themselves or admit to the truth that they are completely detached from reality and don't know who they have no clue who they are. Yet they're the most successful and will tell you that they do, but they don't. All right? I struggle with this. I get caught in places where I know everything and I got it all figured out. I really struggle with this out of reality dynamic within me. All right? So they leave out details in discussions. They avoid discussion or arguments, and they guard against letting others know them. But even worse, this is what's so heartbreaking. Most of this is a defense from being able to know themselves. Because underneath all of this false empowerment, all of this exterior approval and achievement, as I said, is tremendous shame and very low self-worth and self-love and self-esteem. They don't want to see and feel that. They're so hurt. Their deep shame core gets covered over by their achievements and their overinflated belief of their competency. They use their success to deceive themselves that they're doing well in life. That's why they stay busy to avoid reality and connection with you and with themselves. They believe they are better than others, and because of this, they will resist recovery. We all know those people. I don't need to talk to them. I got to figure out I don't have any problems. I'm good. I don't trust them. That's their false empowerment. They rarely will get professional help because they believe they have it all together and they can hold up all of these exterior things as proof of that. So any perceived problems that are going on are your problems, but not theirs. They almost never admit they're wrong, and it can be virtually impossible to hold them accountable. Unfortunately, this side of codependence is the toughest to treat because they are so out of touch with reality. This pig-headedness of theirs will have them mislabeled as narcissist as well. Many people, I've done other videos on this, codependent or narcissist. Many people mislabel a falsely empowered codependent as a narcissist when they're not. And you can watch those videos if you want to learn the difference. But because the falsely empowered, their self is all external based. It's all about achievements and appearances and all of that. They hold that up as I'm well adjusted, I'm healthy. They're completely out of reality of their internal condition, the way they behave within themselves and with others. It's like talking, I'm trying to think of a polar opposite. Somebody speaking Spanish and they're telling you they speak English. They don't know that they speak Spanish. They just don't. That's how detached they are from themselves. And they don't know that they are. Yet they believe they are the most attached and most centered and most balanced person. That's what's so scary about this and so heartbreaking, is how far away from truth they are. Yet how they hold themselves up as the bastions of truth. And they don't see it. Let's get to number 4, the lack of self-care. The falsely empowered are needless and wantless. They won't ask for help because they don't want to appear weak, and therefore they tend to avoid interdependence. That's connection. Remember the lack of boundaries. They are disinterested. They're common, like I know when someone shows up late, boom, falsely empowered codependent. I mean, there's the one-off, someone ran into a problem, but a hallmark, you can tell right away. A person who's late, falsely empowered codependent. Being late's a power dynamic. It's all about power. It's not an accident. It's not, I have ADD. No. Well, if you ADD, ADHD, that's just childhood trauma. Attention deficit. You didn't get enough attachment and attunement in childhood. Your fear center is through the roof. Like, I'm so sick of medicine just dumping pills on everybody and destroying people instead of getting them to deal with their emotional trauma. ADD, ADHD is just trauma. And that's what created your false empowerment and the reason you try and control others through this. And at the end here, I'll talk about the type of parenting that created this dynamic. So they become dismissive or even becoming angry at having to care for others. Or they get sick. This is one of the primary ways. Besides having something always being more important than the relationship, whether it's a career or hobby, the other primary way that they avoid intimacy and keep their power over others is by getting sick or hurt. And people don't like to hear this. We have this incredibly false attachment to believing the medical community is perfect, and it's not. They only learn about biology. They take air. They treat you like a car. It's like, oil's down, give it oil. Well, medicine needs to be biopsychosocial. We need to look at somebody's social environment, the psychology of them. If you truly want to treat somebody, but they don't care about the psychosocial. You're just a machine, and they try and fix a part. It's a terribly inept way, and eventually they'll figure it out. But they'd have to deal with their own trauma history to deal with how out of touch with reality they are. Because they'd have to admit, because they're holding up, I'm a doctor, I have all this knowledge and everything. I'd have to get out of my false empowerment that society has placed on medicine, that they're all gods and every doctor is there to protect me, and they are, but they're vastly undereducated or inadequately educated on the complete aspect of what creates poor health. And almost all of it, even by the CDC's estimations, between 80 and 95% of all illness and disease is caused by stress. What's stress? Fear. It's an emotion. Nearly every illness and disease starts as an emotional problem. Our doctors should be taught that and should be given the skills and tools to help us heal that. And so if you're sick and hurt a lot, it's just like me. I talk about it in my book. I won't get into the stories. I've told it too many times. But we're using this to control others so that we don't have to be vulnerable. It's a power dynamic. That's what all of the false empowerment is. It's a power dynamic. Getting sick and hurt is one of the greatest ways to get power. Because look, I'm sick and hurt. I can't do anything for you. You have to take care of me. But do you see the wall? I don't have to be vulnerable. There's no interdependence. I get all the care. And I don't have to admit that I'm weak. I don't have to admit that I'm needless and wantless. Like it's such a masterful, covert, manipulative dynamic to keep their empowerment and not expose their shame, low self-worth, and true fears of connection. Being sick and hurt is one of the greatest ways falsely empowered codependents. They can be chronically, or when things get too big for them, they'll get sick and hurt to trigger all of that and get that care. Okay? This is how they avoid that emotional, physical, intellectual, and sexual intimacy to keep their control and distance. They use that, but virtually every strategy is to avoid connecting on all of those levels. Number 5, the falsely empowered are overly mature. They are rigid, perfectionistic, obsessive, stubborn, and controlling. They are doers. They cannot sit still. They cannot moderate their work and life balance. In most cases, they have addictions, and a lot of times to what society says are healthy. Animals are addiction, kids are addiction, certain food. Now we're condoning we're massively obese and we're condoning obesity, and that's an addiction. We have all of these, there's the classic drugs, gambling, porn, all of that. But now our society is now we're legalizing drugs. We're just legalizing more and more addictions and going, oh, it's okay if you have this addiction. Don't deal with the trauma underneath. Let's not get into reality. Let's not deal with our pain. Let's just create a new card that says, oh, you don't have to deal with yourself. Get the world to take care of you. It's just creating more false empowerment. All right? So I never have to live in truth, take responsibility, or heal. I can get you to do it for me. And government and society is promoting it and advocating it. We are creating a deeper and deeper victim culture so that we don't have to take responsibility for our lives. We can all stay the wounded child. All of these beliefs, all of these structures that society creates, they're created by children because that's what children do. Children play the victim because it's the only way they know how to get power. All right? And so they place responsibility on somebody else. And that's part of normal child development. That doesn't make them a bad child. Well, because, as I say, we're all codependent, we're all stuck in the wounded and adapted wounded child, these are the laws and societal rules we're creating. It's just fact. Between 95 and 97% of our life, daily life, every single adult on this planet isn't present. They're just replaying programs from childhood. They're living out of their subconscious. They're living in the wounded and adapted wounded child space. All advertising, TV, movies, every media is made for between 3rd and 7th grade education emotionally. Why? Because we're all children. That's why. We are all stuck as children. And children don't like truth, don't like responsibility, and they shouldn't know how to heal. And so why I confront all of this is what I'm trying to do is do my best. I don't always succeed, but lovingly point out truth that we're all stuck in our trauma as children. We all need to take responsibility and do the work to heal so we can move into adult maturity and moderation. And so everything I'm describing, all of these techniques are a lack of maturity and moderation. It is the way we all drop down into that wounded and adapted wounded child space. All right? So addictions can be work. They're kids, animals, working out, seemingly normal, healthy things that are condoned by society to hide all of our shame and our low self-worth, self-esteem. So how do men and women express them differently? Well, falsely empowered codependent men primarily avoid intimacy and connection through their work, their hobbies. They will tend to have sexual affairs and addictions. They use their money and their intellect and charm or gifts to manipulate, control, and have power over others, specifically women. Some of that has to do with mating strategies. Women want those things too, so it works. If I can appear to a woman that I have money and all of this, I can seduce her. But there are many women that aren't after all of that, but a falsely empowered codependent man, he's pursuing all of this external stuff so that he can control her and get her through the gifts and manipulation and all of that. Now, what about women? And see, this is what's fascinating. With the change in culture and feminism, we're turning women into falsely empowered codependent men. It's really sad that the feminism came about to create equality and really speak to how women had no, ability to care for themselves. The problem is the execution of it is all male. So now they're becoming the perpetrators of their own abuse. That's what I find heartbreaking is, look at all their strategies, they're male strategies. They're all becoming detached emotionally, shut down. They're now starting to have many more sexual affairs. I'll stay out of all of that, but if you do the research and you look at what's happened to women, they're just becoming men. But now, instead of men doing it to them, they're now victimizing themselves with it. They went about, the premise was great. The execution, because we don't know about this stuff, they've completely self-victimized themselves and destroyed their own power. It's really heartbreaking to watch. So how do women, falsely empowered codependents, express all of this? Primarily through sex. Just look at Instagram, look online, look at women's profile pictures on Facebook. It's suggestive. They dangle the carrot. Whether they act on it doesn't matter. It's a power dynamic. It works. It's power over men. But usually what they use are their kids, animals. They primarily have emotional affairs. They're starting, because now they're in the work phase and they're becoming so masculine, they're starting to have a lot more actual physical affairs. They will usually be the ones who get primarily sick, because that's part of their dynamic. To keep power, it works very well for them. As I said, more and more they're using their work and physical affairs and now outside interests and hobbies, as society advocates that they drop their femininity and become men. So they both express it slightly different in their own unique way. And this used to be a primarily male dynamic, not anymore. It is all over the place. It is very hard not to find a falsely empowered female these days. Almost all of them are. It used to be the very disempowered, not anymore. They are primarily falsely empowered and completely out of touch with the reality about their behavior, and holding them accountable, they don't want to hear it. And that, they're not open to a discussion about their false empowerment. That's the key sign, of all of these codependent signs, the 5 keys, the one that is most prevalent with the falsely empowered is how out of touch with reality are. And so they'll listen to this, and then they'll hear me talk about these behaviors, kids, animals, and they're just going to get violently pushed back. They've probably already deleted the video, thrown stuff at me, they don't want to hear it. They can't even consider the option. That's how out of touch with reality are. And that's because of the deep shame and the deep wounding. Now, what creates that? Well, these codependents are created by childhood trauma. They were either spoiled, parentified, meaning latchkey kids or single-parent homes. They had to take care of other kids or take care of themselves. Usually in that single-parent home, they end up being smothered and enmeshed with. The parent, because they don't have a primary relationship, they over-attach emotionally. That's the love for the kids, those mothers and fathers that, in their dating profiles have all of that stuff. They are enmeshing with their child. It's a power dynamic. It's not love. It's a fear of intimacy and connection, and they have complete power over a child. And so that's why they heavily attach to them. And so that's what creates them as an adult, because it's like, wait a minute, you're going to get close to me? I'm going to have to take care of you like mom or dad when they smothered and enmeshed with me? Screw you. And so that's why they pursue all of this detachment, so that they don't have to experience all of that. That's where all that pain is. Now, what's heartbreaking about all of this, again, the lack of attachment to truth and reality, is they will tell you Their childhood was perfect, absolutely perfect. They will make excuses and defend and minimize the mistreatment that they experienced. Again, the reality piece is what's so difficult, that I can show facts, studies, I can show in their own life how all of this is prevalent, and they will not let it in. And that's where they can look like the narcissist. They're just not open to seeing themselves clearly. Again, this isn't a judgment, because remember, why is that? That's how devastatingly abandoning and neglecting and smothering and suffocating and what they would call, what's the term? The devouring mother or the devouring father. In many cases, that's the type of parenting. The parent devoured them because of their own pain. And so the reason they're so out of touch with reality is think of being devoured by a parent. Especially loved, that uber loving mom or dad. That's it's such a confusing dynamic to be so spoiled and so loved, yet there's absolutely no love in it. It's purely manipulative, and it's having all the life sucked out of them for their parents' advantage. Who would want to admit that? Of course they'd pursue anything outside of themselves so they don't have to be present to that truth or these truths that I've laid out. It would be incredibly painful. So I personally, you get to decide what works best for you, but I have tremendous empathy now for these people. Now, I can't have them in my life because they're not capable of being in your life. And so it's kind of this weird juxtaposition of I have tremendous empathy, but they wouldn't accept my empathy, because to do that, they'd have to join relationship. Yet they're falsely empowered. They don't think they have to, work on anything. They already think they're in a relationship and very good at it. It's a no-win. You just can't do it with them. Okay? So there you go. I hope that clears it up for you. You can watch my other videos on codependence if you want to learn more about the disempowered, also the comparison between, narcissists and codependents. But this should really help you understand your coworkers, your partners, and why relationships are so difficult, because our society really promotes and advocates that success is a severely dysfunctional, falsely empowered codependent. So now you know. I hope this helps you, and as always, enjoy the journey.